Hello, hello. Welcome to another Watching Privacy show after Thanksgiving break. And what are we on? 22?
21.
21. Lucky 21.
21.
All right. Let's see. Everyone had a good Thanksgiving, hopefully. Enjoyed the break.
Yep.
Enjoy the food.
Enjoy the food. Yeah, a lot of food.
Football, not so much.
I didn't want to say anything about it, but it's okay. Um, we'll dive into privacy topics. We got a few for today. First, I'd say start a little bit light. I found this post on Reddit, which was pretty funny, actually. If you go to formula1.com, the amount of cookies that are basically displayed on the screen and you have to like consent to or whatever is insane. Somebody went through and it was something like 300, give or take, different cookies that you would either have to approve. Some are like required, some are functional, some are advertising, and a lot of them are preferences and advertising based. And I mean, part of me thinks, Formula One is a very like international thing, so they probably have advertising partners with a lot of different companies around the world, which is probably what it gets to. But the Reddit thread on this thing was just hilarious. I mean, people are unable to like really dismiss the window. The only button that's really prominent is accepting all the cookies. So there's a lot of like kind of dark patterns there where you can't reject or turn on required ones only. One guy actually wrote like a little script, and I'll just read out what he found. He said that there was 14 required cookies, 20 functional cookies, 17 advertising cookies, 12 consent toggles for purposes, which I'm not sure exactly what that means, and then 545 partner consent toggles based on 219 interest toggles. So, I mean, just those numbers alone on a website is kind of a lot in general, I would say, to say the least. But the screenshot on Reddit is actually pretty hilarious too. The one we had on the previous slide, where it just goes on and on. You can just imagine like a very thin, long picture. And like at first, when it renders on the phone, you have no idea on the computer. You have to click on it and then zoom in, and then it's just a long scroll in order to actually see a list of every single one that pops up. But yeah, I guess, I mean, this is kind of the norm, but maybe taken to a little bit of an extreme. Hopefully people are using ad blockers when they see this, but I think this is probably a lot more common than people realize. It's just maybe a bad implementation on Formula One's part to mask it. I don't think other people are doing anything less. I think it's probably just maybe found out a cleaner solution for it. What do you guys think?
It matches up for me. Whenever I see, whenever I see a Formula One car or a driver wearing the Formula One dress, it's stamped with a bunch of logos out there.
That's
so
true.
it pretty much. So typically you see a single logo on your jersey, right? In this case, with Formula One, you see 20, 30 maybe stamped or plastered in there. Now they're extending the experience to the web.
Experience.
I love this guy. What's his name? Gas Klep? Something like
Yeah.
that.
Good thing
I
they were
can't
PC
even
usernames.
confirm my choices because the buttons don't fit my screen.
Yeah,
I mean, that says it all, man.
I mean, broadly though, I think what you notice is you're seeing this. The reason you're seeing this in the first place is GDPR and the government's wanting to be open, which is a good thing. Obviously, because they don't say how this has to be implemented, everyone follows certain dark patterns to cheat the user or make it difficult. It's easy to accept all. They do not make it easy deliberately so to reject all, right? So the second thing is pop-ups are back. Thanks to this, we notice that the pop-ups are back, and you see the reason you see these pop-ups is for cookies, and again they make it easy to accept everything in their benefit, and they're not acting on behalf of the user in this case. So I think those are the second level implications of it. I like the privacy angle that the GDPR imposes, because they do not say how it has to be implemented, what should the default should be, and whatnot. I think we are seeing these things, and I don't think there is any end. They cannot go and define every single piece, because each vendor gets creative on how to abuse users' privacy, and this is probably a glaring example of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big Formula One person, but I assume advertising is heavily funded in there, because it's not just the car that's labeled; it's the racetrack itself and like everything about it. Everything is sponsor driven. I'm pretty sure it's an extremely expensive thing to do in the first place. But if you have that many sponsors and that much advertising involved, you're going to have a conflict of interest at some point for basically everything they do. So not a good look for them in general. But at the end of the day, they're kind of a monopoly on, I guess, high end racing. So kind of like every other sports league, you can't really do much about it. The next article, I think, Brent, you have anything else to add, or should I just truck along?
Truck along, man.
All right.
It's unbelievable what's going on with that.
The next one was a Rolling Stone article that came out, and it was pretty vague, at least from my interpretation of it. But basically, I mean, it's what we kind of know. Unreported FBI document obtained by Rolling Stone reveals private messaging apps, WhatsApp and iMessage, are deeply vulnerable to law enforcement searches. And so they go on to talk a little bit more about some type of what is it called? The FBI has some document that basically outlines how they get these requests and stuff like that. And so, one thing they said was, let's say for WhatsApp, for example, a subpoena only yields basic subscriber information. With the search warrant, WhatsApp turns over address book contacts for a targeted user, as well as other WhatsApp users who have targeted individuals in their contacts as well. So, like maybe message content isn't quite there yet, at least on the iMessage on the WhatsApp side, but obviously metadata is the massive thing here. So the metadata obviously captures what users talk to each other, when they do it, which other users have each other in their address book, devices, locations, all that metadata also is being sent over. I mean, I don't think this is anything new, so I'm not sure how it was like a big story, but it did seem to get a little bit of, I would say, a little bit of a hype cycle. And then, yeah, I mean, did you guys see anything that stuck out of the article, or everything was pretty much stuff I think we've kind of talked about a little bit here and there before?
Yeah, it's a clickbaity, sensationalist title that got them attention. There's no meat in there.
Yeah.
So I think we know that metadata is what can be shared and not the content, and that is obvious. And they talk about contacts and whatnot. WhatsApp and all of this gets its contacts from the contacts database within the phone, and they are in sync, right? And that I don't think is encrypted. So anyone who has access to a phone can get it. It doesn't matter if it is WhatsApp or some other thing. So it's again clickbaity title. That I think that said, there is the key point really is legislation. When you send out a request for data, when you have legal permission to request it, any business has to provide it. That's part of the legal framework, right? So now the challenge really is, and we discussed this a few times, right? Legislations are local, and apps and services are global, and therein lies the conflict. And it's not easy to solve, because a company is, let's say, here in US, and US companies can get as much information about all the users, global users. But what if someone from Germany wants to get information from a US company? They do not have the legal authority to go request information about a German user in US, or maybe from another country like India or Japan or any of these, right? Because legislations and the scope is restricted to a particular country, and then that is the legal framework is restricted to the country. But then the user base that these services are serving are global. This is the reason I keep saying that we will see these virtual walls come up, and the restrictions will keep coming up, because and we will likely see several local regional services pop up to serve the local user base.
I keep thinking so many themes are repeated on all of our episodes, and I think part of it is because the technology is way ahead of any kind of policy or legislations, and it's not just it's ahead, it's actually getting further and further ahead, because technology is coming out. It's like almost every day there's something new that we all have to kind of react to, as individuals, as corporations, as other kind of entities, and as governments of all local, state, nation. There is no world kind of policy, but it's getting harder to, I guess, react to technology and what it does and the rate that it's doing it. And that's just going to be an ongoing theme. And all these things that we talk about from a privacy perspective, I think it's just kind of getting more difficult for privacy to stay or get to where it should be, because it's not where it should be right now.
Yeah, one thing, I mean, Raji, you mentioned the content piece, but I thought I read a little bit of mixed information on there. When you have like your WhatsApp conversations backed up on either iPhone or Android, I think those are unencrypted. And even in the article, one thing that it did mention was if a targeted user backs up their iMessage activity to iCloud, Apple's storage platform, obviously, the FBI document says the law enforcement can request backups of the target device, which includes the actual messages they sent and received on iMessage, if they're backed up in the cloud. So this backup is, I would say, kind of a catch-22, right? Like you back up because you want, a safe copy of it, but if that backup is then exposing everything, then it's not a very good backup. I mean, have you seen anything on that or no more?
I didn't. Nothing that revealed on that front. I knew that iCloud backups aren't encrypted. I didn't know if iMessages are part of it. I'll be surprised if they are.
Okay, yeah, maybe it was just, I mean, given the whole article is a little sensational, I wouldn't take it that they worded the sentence a little bit officially. But yeah, it would be kind of weird if it wasn't, but who knows? Let's see. I think the next story is a little funny. McDonald's, everybody's favorite happy place, could face a lawsuit over data privacy laws. And I mean, this one was just kind of funny on a lot of different levels. And so basically, long story short of this claim is this Shannon Carpenter is filing a claim, and she's saying that McDonald's collects voice prints without consent, because obviously none of us have consented to giving McDonald's our voice prints ever. But the article goes down a little bit deeper, and those features include pitch, volume, duration, as well as identifying information from the voice print, such as age, gender, nationality, national origin. And then they basically take that voice print and they pair it with their other AI technologies like license plate scanning. So the voice print can then associate the voice itself to the car, to the credit card transaction that happened, and you've got a full circle of information now. Is McDonald's this smart? Are they in this game? Or
Well, they probably outsource that part to someone else, and there is other company probably collecting all the information. But now, how is McDonald's going to solve this problem? Is going to be interesting. What is the drive-through equivalent of the pop-up we were talking about? With the terms and conditions, like honk to accept conditions, terms and conditions maybe. So I think we may be heading down this path.
Well, it could be worse. It could be like, sometimes some services, it's just by using the service, you agree to the terms, right? And it's like, you don't even know what it is, but you pull into the drive-through lane, and it's like, by pulling into the drive-through lane, you accept every terms and service of McDonald's, and you wouldn't.
Look, I'm just trying to get a Happy Meal. I'm not trying to have my voice printed, recorded, sold on the dark net or whatever. I was just looking for, to supersize, get some extra fries. This is so ridiculous. Now, I understand maybe it's, the technology partner or, somebody going rogue. But man, I just want to order. I'm not expecting it to be recorded. And,
they just want you to order more, Brent.
But I think this is the dark side of AI, Brent. AI gets better once it has a lot of information. How do you collect all this information and of various formats? And for example, to analyze all the voice, you need a lot of voices from diverse set of groups, right? Male, female, various accents and whatnot. Where do you get that information? Somebody has to be collecting it, and then somebody has to be selling it, which means there are data brokers that collect voice prints across various things that are in turn sold to companies that do AI work and analyze and improve their algorithms. So whatever, and I'm not saying McDonald's is doing it, I don't know if they are, but that is the use case you see. Recently, about a few months back, I've seen my kid playing a game on her iPad. And it basically says, take a photo of this, take a photo of that, and then they get some points, reward points. What essentially they're doing is they're collecting a set of images, and then sending it,
devious.
and right, and they're using that for training their algorithm, right? And they are tricking a kid to collect all this information at the back end. They're selling that information so you basically now can buy whiteboards. You can purchase, to recognize handwriting, you can purchase images of whiteboards, images of people writing on a white piece of paper. You can, of course, audio, video, image patterns, face recognition, and whatnot. All of this data, there are data repositories and that are for sale. And companies who are working on AI are buying these repositories. And so I won't be surprised if McDonald's or an equivalent of such companies have an additional, I would say, revenue model on top of selling this. How many times have you seen this, right? The same repeatable pattern you're saying, Brent, is, they make money through selling you their product. They also make money from selling your data. So I'm not saying McDonald's is doing it, but I'm not going to be surprised if they do it.
So in other words, it's like, would you like to supersize that order? And also maybe we'll throw in an additional voice print of your boss. Or,
just like
weird.
Just like they're asking you, do you want fries with that? At the back end, they're saying, do you want voice data with that?
That's right.
I don't think you really have a choice, so it's not like
But I know we got to move on to the next one, but once again, we're already giving them, and we'll just say fast food, don't be specific. We're already giving them our money for the food. But now potentially they're treating us like the product. So we're not just buying the food, we're actually the product now, which is going to be sold off to somebody else. That's pretty devious.
I think
go ahead.
This may have come up because of, I think, one of the recent legislations from Illinois we may have talked about, right? The biometric information, and this is a result of it. I'm curious how Alexa operates in Illinois, but I think Alexa might be a slightly different case where you have to, as Tejas said, you have to accept their terms and conditions before you proceed. But this is an interesting case.
Yeah,
There's no terms and conditions.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to get a voice box emulator, and when I go to the drive-through and just talk through it, so they don't get my real voice at this point.
Yeah, there's no telling, like, if McDonald's here is like basically using this data for themselves to upsell, or if some third-party company comes in and is like, hey, like, we'll give you X amount of dollars in exchange. Let us just put some mics around here, and no harm, no foul to you. You just pick up a few extra dollars here and there, and we'll share with you whatever information we collect. But at the same time, they might collect it from, let's say, McDonald's and Starbucks and 15 other, types of companies like that. And now they've got a pretty good aggregate. And I'd say the worst part about it is definitely the connection of, a voice print to a license plate, because that connection, that completely de-anonymizes it, right? Like, there's probably other ways to de-anonymize it, but I mean, credit card, car, voice, that's full circle, everything else is connected to it. So not a good look at all. And hopefully, I mean, if this Illinois law is the reason it comes out, then I think it's probably a good law, and hopefully more stuff comes from it, if that's the case. But in general, I guess we'll see if that's happening. I wonder if maybe we'll do some digging and see if other companies have to disclose it, because I don't know if they would. I mean, it would probably be just veiled under like terms and conditions that, like, we share data with advertising or, business partners based on whatever, and you have no idea what that actually means. And so I think that could be the case. But yeah, we can move on a little bit here. The next story was from across the pond. Basically, the Information Commissioner's Office in London, UK, England, whatever. They basically calls on Google and other companies to eliminate existing privacy risks posed by the ad tech industry. This is a pretty short article. There wasn't a lot of depth to it at all. I think it's ultimately just kind of like some government office trying to yell to make it seem like they have teeth, but no actual action item. Did you guys get anything out of this one, or just kind of it seemed like a good story, and then you clicked on it, and there just wasn't a lot of like, what are we going to do about it? It was just like, hey guys, please be nice and play nice and don't do bad things. Nothing more. What did you guys think?
I had to double check the date to make sure this is not 2011.
Yeah.
Where were they all along?
Yeah,
What were they
exactly.
doing?
What was that old Wendy's commercial? Where's the beef?
Yeah,
Kind of felt like that.
I don't expect anything out of these. You really have
Yeah.
to act. You really and you need to have. You need to. I actually like some of the recent moves FTC is making. They're basically acting, and for a long time they haven't been. They've been on the sidelines, and now I like the fact that they're now more proactive and whatnot. I'm hoping to see these such agencies get back into the game and just do their job.
yeah. I think in England, actually, I don't think we have a slide for it, but I saw this week Facebook and the Giphy merger was getting shut down, I think, by the UK court, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know how that implicates like the worldwide purchase, or is it just like in UK you have to be two different companies, but the rest of the world you're fine? Is that kind of how one of those would work? Do you have any idea?
I don't know how it works in a multinational. I don't know if it is a different thing, but similarly, I like the move FTC is making between Nvidia and ARM.
Oh yeah,
That's a good
big
move.
one.
Similarly, Nvidia, FTC is looking into the supply chain challenges where because at the end of the day, the big companies, big e-commerce companies are benefiting from the supply chain mess that we are in, where the small and pop companies are the ones hurting, and they are trying to analyze to see if they are doing anything specific to benefit from it. This is the role of an FTC. This is what they are supposed to do, and I'm glad they're doing something about it after sleeping for a few decades.
Yeah.
Nothing to add to that.
All right, we can track along then. The next one's pretty light. This is an old article, or I guess a tool from Mozilla from a couple of years ago, but it started making rounds again, I guess. Someone must have resurfaced it, and it seemed to get a little bit popular, so I thought I'd mention it. But it's this, say, like, silly little website where basically, we've talked about this for a long time. Basically, the more websites you go to, builds a profile about you, and then advertisers can target you accordingly. So they've got these four profiles. Influencer, Doomsday, Filthy Rich, and I forgot what the fourth one is. There you go, Hyperbeast. I don't know what a Hyperbeast is, Brent. Maybe you can tell me. But anyway, there's four personas, and you click on the personas, and it'll open 100 different tabs of random websites on your browser. First of all, I clicked it, and opening 100 tabs is never good in any way. So I don't know how this is like the smartest or best way of showcasing this, just because like your computer is going to feel the pain from 100 tabs opening like this. And then the websites that they open, like if you click on Filthy Rich, for example, it'll open up a bunch of like websites like Ferrari.com or some like luxury watch brand you've never heard of, or like, those kinds of things. And it hopes that, basically based on all those viewing patterns from your browser and from the IP, you'll start seeing some ads just to kind of prove you to take privacy a little bit more seriously. Not a lot of meat to the thing in general, like I said, but it was a nifty little tool. Whether it's accurate or not, I saw a lot of mixed results on how valuable this really is. But anything that brings awareness, I guess, is a good thing. So it doesn't hurt. But I don't think this really does much. Did you guys know anything more about this, or it's all kind of just for show?
I think you're falling for their trick. Here's the irony: the blog post that talks about blocking and lack of tracking itself has a tracker in there. I don't know.
I think it has Google Analytics. Yeah,
it has Google Analytics. Of course, it has Google Analytics because 90+% of their revenue is coming from it. So, in other words, this is a nice trick where they are trying to profile and track people who are interested in not being
privacy.
tracked.
Yeah, and then we'll track them harder.
Track them harder, and this is a good way to. So we'll have them install all of this, and we'll just link it to the ID, and there you are. So we'll double down on our advertising for these folks.
So I fell in the trap. Oh God,
this is like the Devious show. I mean, first we had our voices being recorded when we're trying to supersize our fries and shakes. Now we got this. I mean, good Lord, what's next? Well,
Next level.
yeah.
I mean, it's not surprising. Like even in the privacy aspect, right? Like if we're searching for privacy stuff, or we seem to have cookies and stuff on, we obviously know that we can dynamically have a website that pops up. So if I go to some vendor website, whatever company.com, and they know that I've brought third-party cookies off in some like settings and looked at my profile history, then maybe the first thing at the top fold of the website is privacy aware software, some generic tagline like that, rather than some other value that they might do. I mean, it's very easy to dynamically have those pages displayed, and yeah, I mean, privacy conscious is definitely just another attribute of a person, as if they liked sports or art or whatever else, right? It's just another thing that you can market basically on and mislead people that way. So, yeah,
Yeah.
good point.
And some of these trackers, just like you said, Tejas, where when there are vendors that say by using our services, you're accepting to the terms and conditions. By the time you visit that particular website, you load that, they've collected all the information before you even accepted any of these cookies and whatnot, right? They know which IP you're coming from. They know which device you're using, Mac or a PC browser, and they probably know about 100 to 200 different things that they have collected before you even click on it. So by default, without even accepting, just by visiting their website, you're accepting to their terms and conditions, or at least whether you accept or not, they're getting all the information from you.
And Annika looks like she's okay for them to use her for this, since she already has 100 tabs open. Very nice.
Let's see.
And by the way, just to add to it, that is where the fingerprinting comes into play, right? The fingerprinting tries to analyze all the tabs you have open. If you have 100 tabs, let's just say that further helps in targeting the user, because there are not a lot of people that have the same 100 tabs open at any point of time, which means they can directly target you, the individual. So it's a cohort of one.
And I think I hear Annika closing tabs as we speak. All right, let's get into, I think, something that we'll have a lot more to talk about here. This was, I think, a low-key story that I think has a lot higher implications than people kind of give it credit for. But Tile, the popular, let's say, Bluetooth tracker device company, is acquired by Life360, which is a popular family sharing kind of administrative app that does a lot of like tracking for parents of like their kids, and I would imagine things along those lines. But Tile selling for 200 million, which is I think about 150 million more than they're probably worth, in my opinion. But they basically, I mean, all they make is these trackers. AirTags cannibalized a lot of what they kind of do, unfairly or fairly, however you want to look at it. But I think we talked about Tile specifically a couple episodes ago, and just kind of seeing what information they're tracking about you, what their privacy policy is. And Tile was, in their defense, not like the worst in the world when it came to like the amount of data they were collecting and how they were sharing it or not sharing it. But Life360 is a whole different business model, where their terms and conditions and privacy policies explicitly say how they share data with third-party services about location and app devices and stuff like that. And so it's kind of like, you buy into a company, an ecosystem, if you will, of Tile devices, and you have a vendor trust there, and then it gets scooped up or sold or bought, however you want to look at it, changes ownership over to another company who has their own complete set of business practices, if you will. We can also call them maybe business ethics, whatever. And now you're subjected to that. So like now these like 8 or 10 Tile devices that I have, I don't want to use them anymore. I'll probably throw them away because I literally, or maybe I'll try to find and sell them or something. But I mean, it just really sucks when you buy something from one company, that company gets bought out, and now you're subject to like the new company's, let's say data policies, right? Fitbit and Google was probably the biggest one that got people up in arms when, Google bought them and they were scared about that data exchange. So I think this is kind of like I wouldn't say slippery slope, but something that some people maybe aren't as aware of that they probably should be. And I don't know what you can really do to protect yourself, but do you guys have different thoughts on it, or just, I mean, that transfer of power kind of happens without the user's consent, really, right?
I mean, that has been the business model for a lot of these companies, unfortunately, right? And what happened to WhatsApp? We know that, right? After the acquisition and whatnot. And I think yesterday there was a discussion about, Instagram basically turning into Facebook. Of course, right? All of these are, once the acquisition is done, sure, the entrepreneur succeeded, the investors that invested in the company succeeded. Well, they throw the users under the bus. So, in other words, users and the usage are the fuel for some of these. I think the entire model, I believe, is broken. Fundamentally, I have a disagreement with that business model where this becomes the vehicle for a few people to get rich, and the real users that power the system are thrown under the bus.
Yeah, talk about a recurring theme. I think over and over we've talked about company A does something and they do it with a certain intent, and it's a good intent. But then they get bought by company B, who has a completely separate business model and set of ethics and culture. And what happens? The good one gets engulfed into the bad one, and the bad one carries forward with now even more data to do the bad stuff. Yeah, I think I don't know. At least this country is going to have to look at mergers differently, acquisitions differently, not just on current market share, but on potential based on data, not on size, on data, the kinds of data, the amount of data, and how often they're able to update that data. I don't know if that's being done now. It doesn't feel like it is. Or maybe they're so focused on these big guys, extremely big guys, that smaller companies who kind of fly under the radar can start to do certain things like what we're just talked about, buy a company, fold it into theirs, get all the data, then use the data in a way that it was never meant to be used, before the merger. I really hope this is starting to be looked at very seriously, because I think this kind of development where companies buy data companies that on the surface seem completely different or separate from their current business model, but this merger, this acquisition provides them with something that kind of is devious, if you ask me. I'm not speaking specifically about this, but the potential for bad works, bad practices, bad intent increase when you see companies buying other companies that have all this data and the capability to continue to get that data brought into their hands, so to speak.
I think a broader thing is, again, I'm not specifically talking about Tile or the other companies that acquired Tile, but in this case, in general, I would say the companies with morals are losing. In other words, it's stacked against them. If like the ones that are doing really, really well are the ones that are extremely unprofitable, and so similarly, even in this context, the ones that are abusing user privacy are the ones that are succeeding, and that means the ones that are really doing the right thing are being shoved to the side. And I take it, Facebook, you thought Facebook was abusing user information, and they are, and then TikTok one-ups them, right? And you have TikTok, and then what is that facial recognition company? Clearview, right? They clearly one-ups maybe even TikTok, all of these, right? So the ones that are abusing are the ones that are succeeding financially because everything, and the ones that are trying to do the right thing for the user don't have anything going for them. Everything is stacked against them. I think that is part of the problem. That said, in this case, I'm not taking a side with Tile, because Tile and AirTag, they both suck. This is a disaster waiting to happen in my view. I think this tag-based surveillance is something we are just seeing a 1.0, but a few years from now, this is going to come back and bite us, because this surveillance this is one of the worst forms of surveillance. We were talking about McDonald's. Do this thought experiment. What makes you think McDonald's or any fast food at their station where they take the orders have a simple tile or a tag there, right? That identifies devices around there. It's just a Bluetooth communication out there. So now they have a lot more information than just your voice print. They know who drove through that and how many devices were around near that, and all of this. It's going to get really, really bad moving forward. So I think I'm not a fan of this tag-based surveillance. This is going to be a disaster, and remember, Tile had a partnership with Amazon recently. I don't know what happens to that, but Amazon has access to this information. Let's just say, the new acquirer will keep providing or pumping that information to Amazon, and that deal will be intact. And who knows what other deals will be stacked on top of it. But this entire progress and the success of Tile, if I can call it that, is a bad sign to the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to not just Tile, but the Life 360 that bought them. I found a couple excerpts from their privacy policy. So we may share your personal information, including precise location data, driving sensor data, unique identifiers, and other data with third parties for their marketing or business purposes, including without limitation to improve third-party advertising for market research. And basically, the next one was we share your driving event data, other information to some Arity company, which is a subsidiary, which provides driving analytics behavior services to enable us to provide certain functionalities of the service, such as driving event history. They use this information to calculate discounts, rewards, pricing offers by third parties, such as insurance companies. And that's happening from Life 360, which is a app solely built around families and like being able to communicate with each other, share information, track your kids, things like that. And it's like there's a whole other business model there. And it's not like I'm pretty sure Life 360 is not free. I think you have to pay a subscription for it. So again, like the money you're paying is not even enough to justify the business or get you out of this tracking and data sharing. It's just all a part of it, which is extremely problematic, right?
There's a meta issue, which is every company getting into the business of selling data and finding an additional revenue stream. It goes back to greed and whatnot. I don't want to get there, but look at where all the information is being collected. There's no reason why the Easy Pass or Texas Tag or all these companies, because they know where you're driving and they scan your number plate too. They know how many times you travel and whatnot. Is that information sold? I won't be surprised if it is. But this information and information is being collected and everything is digital. That is probably, I guess, the other side of being digital. It's easily sold, and sold across vendors and replicated and whatnot. And these are the negative implications of data being digital.
I think of a scenario that just keeps coming up. Good intention, good culture, good business, happy customers. But what if, let's say they're a publicly traded company and they miss expectations one quarter, they miss expectations another quarter, and they start getting a lot of heat, and then they say, we do have all this data over here that we're really not doing anything with. Do you think we could possibly do something with it and build another revenue stream and help us make our numbers and beat expectations? So even if you have the right intent, the wrong economic environment could open the door to doing something with all this data that you purposely try to stay away from doing anything with outside the first intended use of it.
Companies are just one bad quarter away from moving that line on what is acceptable and what's not. And when that keeps moving over a period of time, what you see is equivalent of Google, where the ads that come from the site to the top, where that is a transition. It happens. And I think this week somebody tried to sue Google or not being or being evil or some such thing, right? So, well, frankly, we should be naive to even even think that this is not the direction that anyone is going. Any of these companies are going, because publicly traded companies have that they are on a treadmill which keeps on increasing speed every quarter, and at some point people are going to fall off when it is pushed beyond a certain point. Then obviously the regulators come in, and what happens, there is the founders are not going to be comfortable dealing with regulation. They'll step out, and we have seen that with Larry. We have seen that with recently, of course, with Twitter, and we have seen those with Bezos, and we'll see a lot more of these founders now don't want to deal with regulation, but they you keep pushing the envelope on what is acceptable, and when you hit the limit, well, just time to retire maybe, or maybe go to the space.
This might go off topic a little bit, but do you ever think, like, I'm sure I'd give benefit of the doubt. Most of these folks start with good intentions, and then like we were talking, the pressure of like the quarter over quarter gets to you, and at a certain point, even if they wanted to like scale back and like maybe quote good, you're just not able to anymore because the wheels are in motion. You're already rolling downhill per se, and like you couldn't stop. And so the only way to really just like quote maybe cleanse your soul is to step aside and be like, I don't want to have any part of this. Like that's basically essentially what's happened, because even if they wanted to just say, hey, look, we're not going to do bad stuff and we'll maybe do better in X, Y, and Z areas, they just can't, because I guess if they did and shareholders or whatever revolted, then they would lose their job anyway. So it's the same thing.
Yeah.
But
you're assuming it's the same person making the decision, though. I think the reality is the people that initially had the right ethics, who started this, who went down the path, they checked out after the company went public and their stocks were vested, and they checked out. The people that joined later were left holding the bag, and now they are the ones making the decision, and they are the ones responsible for keeping the stock up and keeping their job, and they don't get anything in return, because it's not like they have the same set of shares that the initial folks have. So that is the model that we are set up for, and that is the reason the average lifespan of a company in, say, S&P 500 in the last 50-70 years dropped from some 50 plus years to about 17-18 years now, because companies are no longer around for long periods of time, because people are not around in the company long periods of time with those initial ethics in place.
Brent?
I need a positive story to end on, Tejas.
I'm not going to lie to you, I thought I had this positive story to end on, but then after Raju gave me like a reality check on the last one, I don't know. So this is another Mozilla project, and take it with a grain of salt. But basically, they made this little website. It's called privacynotincluded.org. And you can search for a bunch of kind of gifts you would probably get for the holidays if you're giving people things. Oftentimes smart devices, maybe a doorbell or a lock or a picture frame or speakers or, random things like that. And, you can go through this website, you can search for a product or click on one, and it gives you kind of a very summarized high-level overview of that product and that vendor, and what the privacy and security implications are of it. As we've kind of said for a long time now, a lot more of the devices we're purchasing and gifting are usually technology connected devices, and so knowing the surveillance state you're subjecting someone else to when you give them a gift is probably a good thing to know. So it'll walk through and it'll say if something has a terrible track record in terms of privacy, if they sell your data, if it's stored locally, how it kind of works. I would use it with, probably a grain of salt, like anything. I don't know if there is a buy now link on these devices, because if there is, that would make this a very unethical website. But if there isn't, you can always just search for the device yourself. But basically, like for privacy, it says like, can it snoop on me? What can be used to sign up? What kind of data does the company collect? Then it has like security information, like encryption and stuff like that. And then does the product UAI? Is the AI trustworthy? And sometimes it'll just straight up say can't determine or unknown, because there's just not enough public information about things. And so it can be very difficult to kind of find out all these kinds of details. I think they've probably done an honest job to some extent in terms of collecting this information and looking up sources. At least I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. And I think it's a good tool to kind of check out. And just, even if you're not gifting stuff, if you just want to see a tool that you have in your house and you want to look it up and see what's kind of collected without having to dig through a privacy policy, it's not a bad thing. But is there something nefarious behind the scenes here, or is this actually a good, potentially not terrible website?
Now, if you're recommending something, I just want to warn that, hey, this website itself tracks you.
Yeah,
They have of course Google trackers embedded in there. It's Mozilla, right? So they have Google trackers in there. Privacy not included, I guess. So,
Well, at least you get some information
Yeah.
out of it, so that's a positive.
yeah. So I think
not the worst thing in
sounds
the world.
not the worst thing in the world. I generally look for trackers, and the worst form of tracker is including Google Tag Manager, because the Google Tag Manager could include 200 trackers. I guess the mistake Formula One did was not to include Google Tag Manager, but to directly embed all of them. This would be, I guess, a smart way to do it. But so, in other words, I have to give it to Formula One for being open about all the tracking, just like the logos that they're slapping.
Or they just need to hire a better web guy. One of the two.
Wow.
Sorry, Brent. I know you're looking for a positive story.
I'm just going to look out the window and enjoy the beautiful weather.
All right, let's wrap on that before we crush your soul anymore for the weekend. We'll be back next week. Yeah, next week is a normal week, I think. Maybe not. Actually, I don't know. We'll maybe be back next week, or maybe on Thursday. Who knows? We'll see. Anyways, thanks for joining, Brent and Raju, as always, and hope you have a good week ahead. We'll see you.